Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Friday Live. Fiona Lukeis here, coming to you live at approximately 12:30, between 12:30 and 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Like I normally do, I'm just going to give the feed a little bit of time to filter through so people know that I am here. I've got a few questions that have been sent in today, so if I don't answer your question, please understand if I don't get to answer your question, it's just because I'm answering questions in the order with which they've been sent in to me. My assistant's not here today either, so I may be a little clunky going back and forth because she normally handles questions and things and gets them all ready for me, but she's not in today, so which is a bit of an unexpected thing. So just bear with me as I go back and forth to the questions. But if you are just tuning in live, I want to say a big warm hello and welcome to you. And as always, please feel free to say hi. Let me know where you are listening from in the world. I always love to know where people are from. And if you have a question that you would like me to answer, you are more than welcome to pop it into the comments below, and I will do my best to answer that for you. You may find that as you're listening to me talk today, something pops into your mind that you'd like to ask, or there's something you want to, you want greater clarification around. This is what today's lives are all about. This is why I show up at this time each and every Friday, so that I can give some greater clarity to you guys out there around an easier way to do life and relationships. As many of you, and I know a number of you tune in each week and you've been listening to me for a while now, but I really just want to reiterate, especially for those of you who are new to my work or new to the live, if this is the first live for you, a really big warm welcome. Really the purpose of this is to trying to show people that there is an easier way to do relationships. Relationships do not have to be as hard and complicated and overwhelming and terrifying as they are for many of you, many people around the world. There is a lot of suffering in our lives that comes from people not having enough understanding around relationships or looking in a direction of really complicated, overwhelming information. I'm all about simplicity and ease. And, you will find in life that the most profound things are always the simplest. And relationships can be extraordinarily profound, and they can be profoundly simple. I often get a lot of kickback when I say that, because people think that I don't know what I'm talking about, that they are very complicated, that they are very hard and complex, and that human beings are complex. And I just really want you to know that, no, we're not. We're not anywhere near as complicated and complex as we think we are. Okay, we're really not. And we all have a lot of similarities. There are a lot of sameness amongst all of us. And when we look in the direction of sameness, you see the truth of what I'm talking about. The simplicity with which we can relate to one another, where we can cut through all the mental noise, all the complicated distractions that get in the way. And when there is a clear understanding between people, we don't get so caught up in all that emotionality that people bring to the table. And then people find themselves arguing over minutiae, or they find themselves at a point where they don't even know what they're arguing about. I was just speaking to a lady this morning who said that my husband and I argue, and honestly, Fiona, I don't even know what we're arguing over. It gets so we just seem to argue for the sake of arguing. And if that's you, that's very, very common. And it looks like there's this complicated answer and this complicated journey that you've got to go on, and lots of things that you've got to overcome, lots of obstacles and differences and stuff that you need to overcome. And I just really want you to know it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't. There's a much simpler, easier way to move through our differences, to move through the difficulties that we face when, especially when you're in that conflict cycle of arguing, getting over it for a day or two or an hour or two or half a day or two, and then back into that cycle again. It's exhausting, it's overwhelming, and it looks like you've got all these millions of issues that you need to resolve in order to actually be okay. And I just want you to know it doesn't have to be like that. And so I'm really passionate. I am. This means this is like something I feel extraordinarily passionate about. There is an easier, simpler way to be in relationship, to do relationships. And actually, when you have that understanding, you find there is an easier, simpler way just to deal with life in general. Okay. And us humans, we love to complicate things, and we just don't have to. Complication is an optional extra. It is not a requirement to go through relationships and life with. Anyway, hey, Darlene, thank you for saying hi. You're in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I remember you saying hi from last week. Thank you so much, Darlene. And again, I hope the sun is shining for you in Canada. I do have a son in Canada at the moment who's it's been working at a ski resort in Whistler, but not on Whistler, but the mountain next to Whistler, whose name constantly escapes me, but he's working there. And I think he's coming to the tail end. He's been there since November last year. And said it was one of the coldest winters of his entire life, but he's had an amazing time. Hey, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for saying hi. You're in New Zealand. Awesome. I've got lots of New Zealanders who do my Relatable program and tune into my Facebook Live. So I love that. Our neighbours just next door here, our beautiful New Zealand neighbours. And anybody else, if you are listening and you'd like to say hi, I always love to know where you're from. Angela. Hi, Angela from Perth. Fantastic. Welcome, Angela. Really nice to have you here. Thank you so much for saying hi. Okay, so like I said, if you have a question, post it in the comments below. I am going to go to the first question that's been sent in to me today. Now, for those of you as well, if you're not on my email list, please, if you're not on my email list, I send a copy of this out with the highlights of what I chatted about every Friday. I call it my relationship roundup email. That gets sent out to everybody who is on my email list. So if you want to join my email list, you can send an email to hello@Fiona Lukeis. I'm going to put that here, .com.au, if you'd like to do that and get access to the recordings and the highlights of this, which I send out every Friday. Okay, so first question for today. Just give me 1 second, everybody, because like I said, my assistant is not here. So I am just going to do a little bit more digging around with her. Okay, so 1 second, guys. Why is it not showing up? Oh, here we go. Here we are. Sorry, everyone. All right, so the question that's been sent here now is, hi, Fiona. I've read your ebook, listened to a number of your podcasts. I have been married for a number of years and have 2 beautiful children. Recently, I moved out of the family home because I just felt broken, dusted, empty, and done. After listening to you and one of my podcast episodes, I could really relate to episode 27 because it's my story and exactly how I've been feeling for such a long time. My question is, though, I have been away from my husband for 2 months now, and at this point, I am not missing him or us. I've started to feel comfortable in my own space and in my own company. Good for you. Our 2 kids will be branching into their own lives within the next couple of years, and it makes me wonder if there's anything substantial between us to fight for. If I'm not missing him by now, your thoughts would be greatly appreciated. Okay, great question. You know, a lot of people come to me asking me, you know, should I stay? Should I go? How do I get clarity around that? You know, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, David. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Nice to have you. Been a busy week of travel, I bet. Oh, well, Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney. Wow, that is a busy week of travel. And anybody else who wants to say hi, feel free to do so below. So this is a really great question. So basically what I would say to you is, if you have been away, and first of all, it's interesting that you're even asking the question, all right? Because you're saying here, I've started to feel comfortable in my own skin and in your own company. You're not really missing him or us, and it makes you wonder if there's anything substantial between us to fight for if you're not missing him by now. And so it's interesting that you're even asking the question, because I think the answer is right there, right? You know, if you've been out for a couple of months and you're really enjoying your own space and you're feeling comfortable and you're not missing anything, there's your answer, loud and clear. So the answer is there. And I think the answer is quite strongly there, right? Quite strongly there. Not just a little bit there, it's quite strongly there. And so I think then what is an important thing for you to ask yourself is, if you can see that the answer is quite strongly there, and for those of you who are going, what is it, if it's not obvious to you, and that's okay, because we're used to second guessing ourselves and overriding our own wisdom, right? To me, it feels like wisdom is speaking quite strongly here from the response and what's being said here. If you are comfortable where you are not missing him, and you're enjoying, and you're not missing the relationship, then no, I would say there's not really anything substantial for you to fight for. Okay. This is, you've done what you've probably been prodded to do. You've probably had wisdom tapping you on your shoulder about this for a very, very long time. And I think this is an important thing for everybody to think about. You know, those of you who know my story know that I fled a violent relationship many, many years ago. And when I look back, and this is the reason why I now do what I do. So I wasn't doing this when I left that. It's a long, long time ago now. But when I look back at that situation, absolutely what was happening to me was I was not listening. I was asleep at the wheel of my life. And I see this as a massive issue for people. People are not listening. They're not tuned in. And, you know, this is such an important part of simplifying everything. When you're tuning in to your own truth, okay, and everybody has their own truth. When you're tuning into your own truth and you know when you are tuned in, the answers become very obvious. And it becomes much easier because you're able to take whatever that next step is from a place of conviction without all the bouncing that people do. Hi, Daryl. Nice to hear from you. Really nice to hear from you. I really hope you're well, Daryl. Lovely to see you on the feed. Really appreciate it. Hi, Miriam. Hi, Miriam in New Zealand. Welcome. Married 42 years. Feels like if I agree with my husband about everything, life would be smoother. He always seems to be right. How do we live like that? Great question. I will come back to that in a moment. So I just want to come back to what I was just saying here for this lady. So it seems to me the answer is very obvious. And again, I want to say to all of you, you really need to check in with yourself and ask yourself, how tuned in to your own truth are you? How dialed in are you? Most of us are so busy-minded and we're rushing and distracted and we're so externally focused that we are not tuned in. We are asleep at the wheel. And I see this across the board with men and women. It's a very human thing. And so when you are asleep at the wheel, you second guess things, you question things, you kind of dumb yourself down in a way, right? I was doing a lot of that. You know, when I look back at that time when I was quite clearly being tapped on the shoulder and saying, hey, Fiona, is this as good as it gets? And that was a question that used to burn in my brain all the time. It got louder and louder and louder. But that was a question that used to be on my mind. Is this it for you? Is this as good as it gets? And I would override that and say, oh, I just need to be more organized with the kids. And then, you know, there won't be so much drama. I just need to do this. I just need to do that. I just need to. And I kept overriding myself. Okay. And, you know, probably the biggest lesson I learned after the end of that, and I was finally out on my own, and I'd done what I needed to do, what I should have done a long time ago, what I'd been tapped on the shoulder to do by my own wisdom, by my own truth, but I wasn't listening. I was too frightened, and I had a lot of thinking, and I was overwhelmed, and all those things. I'm not making myself wrong. And if you're feeling like that, it's not that this is about wrong or right. It's just about, this is such an important thing to be able to tune in. One of the biggest lessons I learned from that was I absolutely need to learn how to do that. Like, my relationship with me, my relationship with wisdom, this is fundamentally important. Okay. And it is just as important. Some of you might be listening to this and going, oh, that sounds a bit woo-woo, right? But I'm telling you, this is fundamentally important. I teach this to CEOs, owners of multi-corporate businesses, stay-at-home mums and dads, tradies, whatever it is, right? This is a very human thing that people need. And when they access that, there's this sense of relief and lightness because they're not overthinking everything. They're not second guessing themselves. They're actually able to step forward from a place of conviction and empowerment. And I think that is incredibly important. All right, incredibly important. So as I listen to this lady's question, you know, I left 2 months ago, and I'm not missing him or us. I'm comfortable in my own space. I'm comfortable in my own company, right? So you are not second guessing yourself, honey, right? Can you see that? It's very clear. Every now and again, I wonder, is there something really substantial for us to fight for if you're not missing him, right? And I'm going to say, if it's not clear to you, then no, there is nothing substantial to fight for. You are on the right path. But what I would be saying to you, okay, what I would be saying to you is I would be making sure that your relationship with your own wisdom is strong, that your relationship with you is strong, right? That you're tuned in. It makes it much easier to have clarity of mind and to know what the next steps are. And so that when our ego does those little moments, because that's the ego, right? You know the difference and you're listening and you can tell the difference immediately. And so it becomes something that doesn't really distract you for long, right? You see it for what it is. That is so empowering because it makes life so much easier to move through, handle, deal with, and know what the next steps are without having to predict the future, micromanage the future, plan everything out, etc., etc. You can actually make the next step or take the next step from a place of clarity, empowerment, and conviction. It is a beautiful place to live your life from. So that is what I would be saying in response to that. Now use this opportunity to tune in to your own wisdom. Make sure that relationship is really solid. And hence why I say to people, when it comes to our relationships, it's very important that we are clear in these three areas. Your relationship with you, so this is part of what I'm talking about, your relationship with life, and your relationship with others. So everything that I teach is all about those three areas. Because when these two are taken care of, your relationship with you and life, the third one is easy, very, very easy. When these two aren't strong, the third one becomes super complicated. And one of the reasons why is we second guess ourselves. We're not tuned in. We're very externally based. We get caught up in fear and ego when we don't realize it. We overthink everything and we get stuck, right? And then when we're stuck, we almost get paralyzed and we just, this is a very, very, very challenging way to do life. It's very hard to find any joy. It feels very empty. You don't feel connected. You second guess everything. And you're in survival mode. Now, if you are experiencing that, I really want you to know you do not have to live like that. You do not have to live like that. There is something else on offer here. I promise you that. Hey, Susan. So nice to hear from you as always. Ray. Hi, Ray from Port Lincoln. Okay, well, welcome. You've got that question going on. Is this Miriam's question or the one that I just have been answering? So that's that answer. Miriam, I want to respond to your question. If you're in a situation where it feels like, as long as you agree with the other person, everything's going to be okay. Okay, cool. Well, I hope that what I just responded helps you with that, Ray. So just coming back to Miriam's question. If you're in a situation, and so Miriam's question is, married 42 years, feels like if I agree with my husband about everything, life would be smoother. He always seems to be right. How do we live like that? Without knowing too much about your situation, Miriam, I'm just going to play devil's advocate a little bit. All right. So when you're in a situation where you are in a relationship with someone where they always have to be right, and so I'm going to guess you feel like you don't really have a voice, right? You don't really feel like you have a voice, and you're probably in a situation like that where someone else is always right. You would be doing a lot of the emotional regulating for that person, right? And this can happen with men and women, where you find yourself in a role where you are their emotional regulator. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, okay, I'm just going to agree because then they're not going to explode or lose it, and everything will just stay calmer. So I'm just going to keep things calm so that I can regulate things, right? So I can regulate things. And so when you're in that role, what tends to happen in that role is one of you often over functions because you're busy trying to keep the peace while someone else under functions. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you are doing all the emotional labor and the other person's not doing so much. And so then it becomes this norm that sets in. Then it becomes this norm that sets in where you're doing all the emotional regulating and all the emotional labor, and the other person's level of awareness gets lower and lower and lower. And so goodwill is very, very low. It doesn't feel good to be around each other. People then become really impatient with one another. They get really frustrated with one another. They fault find, and so that lack of goodwill, the lack of good feeling, just keeps increasing. Is anything that I'm saying, can you relate to anything that I'm saying, Miriam? I just want to see whether I'm on the right kind of path here. Now, the other thing that I want to say is, when you are in that dynamic where you're doing all the emotional regulating, okay, all right, fantastic, okay. What you got to understand, honey, and this is tricky because it looks like it's the other person's problem, right? It looks like it's the other person's problem. But what you got to understand is this is about you. I know this sounds tricky for some of you, and this is going to sound triggering, all right? And I'm not blaming you in any way. Don't hear this like this, okay? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm not saying it's okay that your husband or your partner, if any of you are in that situation, is being self-righteous and difficult and snapping, all right? But I really want you to know that this is at the very heart and soul of low goodwill. Often low goodwill is driving this. And you have to understand as well that people are not aware of how they're showing up. We are our own biggest blind spot. So when people fall into a pattern where they're just speaking to each other like that, they often do not realize their tone, their attitude, their level of dissatisfaction. And look, I know this because I do this for a living, but or through my relatable students as well. I have a whole a whole module on dissatisfaction, and I have a number of students who do that module and are shocked because they realize that they did not realize the lens with which they were viewing things. They were shocked, like deeply shocked, gobsmacked. So you've got this thing going on where you're over functioning, you're doing all the emotional regulation, you're probably doing a lot of rescuing, which would be exhausting, Miriam. All right, utterly exhausting. And what that means is that his level of awareness of himself is getting lower and lower by the second, because this is just becoming the norm. And once something becomes the norm, it becomes invisible. You can't see it. You don't even realize what you're doing. So when I say that this is for you, this is about you. When you're comfortable in your own skin, when you feel strong within yourself, and when I say strong, I'm talking empowered, okay? When you are coming from that place, you will actually be able to show up to that from a very different place. And here's what I mean by an example of that. And look, these may not be your words. I'm just trying to give you an example. I don't know if you're aware of how you're speaking to me right now, but you're snappy, you're negative. There's a lot of putting me down, and I find that really hard to deal with. I'd really love it if we could find a way to relate to each other where we're not taking pot shots, and where I can actually have an opinion with you actually being able to listen to what I have to say, instead of resorting to anger and put downs every time you don't agree with it. Now, the first time you show up from that space, the other person may not like it, because it's no different to anybody. Like if you've been, let's just say you've got young children, and every time they want McDonald's or a lolly or something, you say yes, 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 and then you turn around and say no, they're going to escalate. All right, initially, because it's like, hang on, what do you mean you're changing the rules? We've been doing it this way. You've just got to understand that on the other side of that is an ability for you to get curious with one another and connect differently. Now, obviously, if you're in a situation where you feel physically unsafe, well, that's a different conversation. So I'm going to presume that is off the table. You're just dealing with someone who escalates when and not very great at regulating their emotions, and they've fallen into a pattern where you regulate their emotions for them. And so they don't have to do much of the emotional labor or any of the heavy lifting here. And so what you're going to do, instead of rescuing and regulating, which just creates more of the same, you're actually going to show up to that differently and say, for example, are you aware that you're doing this? Because often people are not. And then say, I'm no longer going to speak to you when you're in that frame of mind. Okay, so when you're feeling calmer, let's talk. But whilst you're taking pot shots at me, whilst you're blaming me, whilst you're not listening, I'm actually going to go and do something else. And when you're calmer, let's connect then. So what you're doing is sort of putting that calm and clear boundary that I'm not engaging in this way anymore, right? And what you can then say is, what I want is just to have fun and to be lighthearted and playful and enjoy each other, rather than coming from this space. Is this something that you would like? So see, what I'm doing is I'm coming from a place of neutrality. I'm coming from a place of curiosity. I'm holding space for something else. I'm not taking it personally when they lash out or react. I'm just saying, okay, well, I'm going to let you regulate that. I'm not going to do that for you. I may not use these words, right? I'm going to let you go sort that out, and I'm going to go do my own thing. When you're ready, let's talk. But what you're not going to do is be this person's emotional regulator anymore, okay? Because that's the dynamic that has to change. Now, in order for that dynamic to change, you need to be very comfortable and clear within you so that you can show up to that without taking it on board. In other words, you can show up to that and stay in your own lane. The most challenging thing people face is when they start doing things like this, they start going into the other person's lane, taking on board the other person's stuff, justifying themselves, explaining themselves, and then they complicate it. And then everything ends up becoming extraordinarily difficult. Now, these are the kinds of things that I talk about in Relatable. I teach in Relatable ways in which you can stay comfortable in your own skin, navigate your thinking differently, so you can show up and be present and calm and curious and stay in your own lane. Now, if you do that consistently, the dynamic will start to change, because it has to, because the other person now has to bring something else to the table, right? They have to show up differently because you're showing up differently. You know, when we bring a different energetic frequency, when we show up differently, and when I use the word energetic frequency, don't roll your eyes, guys, and go, oh, right? We are energetic beings. We are always engaging energetically, whether you know it or not, right? Anyone that's ever walked into a room with a group of people will feel, or ever been introduced to someone will feel, has had that experience of going, gee, there's something about that person that's not quite right, that feels a little bit off to me. Okay, we've all had that experience. That's because you're reading their energy. You can walk into the front door at home and tell immediately if your partner's not in a good mood, because you're reading their energy, you're feeling it, right? There's no doubt about that. We are energetic beings. But when your energy changes, the other person has to show up differently. They have to bring something else to the table. And that's up to them to work out. It's not up to you to help them through that. They have to work that out, right? And what they need is fresh thinking, and what you need is fresh thinking. That's how you can start creating a different dynamic. Now, if someone is snapping at you all the time, I'm telling you that's because goodwill is low. Goodwill is really, really low. And so often, and I just want to talk about the nature of low goodwill for a second, because I cannot tell you how important this is, all right? And how misunderstood it is. When goodwill is low, we are emotionally unintelligent, right? We are emotionally unintelligent. We take things personally. We get defensive. We don't know how to listen. We focus on the problem. We're often bringing things up from the past and asking questions and throwing like a hand grenade in the middle of a conversation. And we don't even realize we're doing it. And so people get impatient and snappy because it feels like that, like it all just feels too hard. It all just feels exhausting. It's just, and people get into this low kind of feeling of, oh, here we go again. Oh, we're doing this again. Oh, right. And they get really snappy and impatient. But that is a result of low goodwill, all right? It's not necessarily because this person is a horrible person. It's just that this is where where goodwill is at the moment, and it is so low. People don't feel good, so they have crappy thinking. They're in a crappy feeling. They're impatient. They don't feel good, and they don't have the emotional intelligence. So when in order to create goodwill, okay, you've got to be able to see all of this in a moment of now. You've got to be able to look at this through a lens of understanding rather than a lens of defensiveness and reaction and frustration and impatience and blame and judgment. And this is often the energy that people are bringing. And so when you come with that energy, people feel it. Remember, we're energetic beings, and they'll resort to the snappiness and the impatience and all of those things. I can't tell you the amount of times I see people have a profound shift within themselves that then creates a profound shift in the other person because their whole energy changes. They stop meeting people energetically at the same place, and they start bringing a calmer, clearer, less judgmental, more open, curious energy to something, and their whole tone changes, and the other person starts to feel safe. The other person starts to let their guard down. Their level of thinking increases. In other words, it's more intelligent. Their snappiness goes away, and all of a sudden they have a completely different conversation. I hear story after story after story of this every single day through my private clients and my students. So I know that this is possible. I just know it is. Happens all the time. It's not until you've experienced that within yourself that you then start to see what I'm talking about, and you've got to experience it in real time to even realize or understand it, okay? And you know what? We are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. We really are. We are capable of so much more. And I'm talking about from emotionality, from an ability to hold space, from an ability to have a completely different experience of something and someone. Once you bring fresh thinking into a situation, people have fresh insights. And we're looking at this through a much more simplified lens. We do not get caught up in the same stuff emotionally in conversations, in communication that trips people up currently. It's really quite incredible. Nadia, hi Nadia. I'm watching from London, UK. Oh my goodness, that would be very early in the morning for you. I came across this live video by complete chance after my daughter woke me up a little while ago, 3 a.m. Oh my goodness. I cannot begin to tell you how much your words resonate with me. I just got back from a yoga retreat where I had tarot cards read. Okay, cool. All with wands in implying I have the wisdom to take the right action. Oh my goodness, honey. Okay. I've been stuck and paralyzed for years now and in some sort of living nightmare and have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Okay. Wow. That's really, really cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad that this is resonating for you. And yes, as I say to many people, if you come across this and it resonates with you, it's not an accident. Okay. You really have to trust in that. There's something that's calling you around that, and you have to tune into that and trust in it. All right. It's not an accident that this resonates with you, just like it wasn't an accident when it resonated with me, and it had such a profound impact on my life because I was a very self-righteous person. I was very busy-minded. I was paralyzed. I was overthinking. When I came across this, I was unable to sleep. I was having panic attacks, which I'd never had in my life. I was full of fear. I was shut down. I mean, I look at the difference in my life, and I'm beyond grateful. Greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I have this clarity of mind. I'm tuned into my own wisdom. I show up differently to life, to the people in my life. I know how to create goodwill. There's a lot more joy in my life. I'm a lot more present and grounded. And I'm certainly not perfect. I certainly get angry. I certainly lose my temper. I certainly still overthink at times. But the difference is night and day. Night and day. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't come across this. I'd definitely be divorced. Not that I'm saying divorced is the be all and end all of life, but where my husband and I were compared to where we are now it still blows my mind. I still cannot believe it. I went from believing I was married to someone I had nothing in common with and in the wrong marriage to that was, we're 19 years married this year. We were 6.5 years married then. I just believed I'd married the wrong person, and that we had nothing in common. I had no respect for my husband. I thought it's just night and day. So, please don't live your life in fear or being paralyzed. It's the hardest, toughest way to live life when you're paralyzed. It's like, right? So hard to feel joy, so hard to connect, so hard to move forward. You do not have to live like that, guys. You just don't. No matter what you're dealing with, you don't have to live like that. There is so much more on offer in terms of depth of feeling, richness of experience, a calmer, clearer, grounded mind, feeling comfortable in your own skin, having the conviction and sense of empowerment to speak your own truth, live your own truth, and do that without fear. It is entirely possible, right? It doesn't mean that life is always going to be easy. Life is a contact sport. There is always stuff going on, right? And I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, but I promise you, there is a whole other way to show up to those things where you're not stuck in that paralyzing world of fear, second guessing yourself, second guessing everything, feeling like you have to dumb yourself down to make it okay for everybody else, right? Remember, you guys have heard me say this before. We are either repeating or evolving. Repeating or evolving. Now, human beings will repeat for a certain period of time. I did all those years ago before I left. I was repeating until the tap on the shoulder got so loud one day that it overrode my own fear. And that's when I made the decision to leave. And, it was very challenging, very difficult, many, many, many obstacles to overcome. There really were. But the sense of aliveness, the sense of knowing that I'd done the right thing, the sense of relief, the sense of getting to know myself and turning the lights back on, so to speak. I was so dulled down, guys. Like, I can't even recognize that person. This is how shut down I was back then. I had stopped any form of self-care. Any form of self-care. I'd stopped showering. I'd stopped. I was like a zombie robot, like a shadow of the person I am today. So shut down, so frightened, so fearful, so out of touch with myself. Like, I can't believe the difference. So I just want you to know, you do not have to live this way. All right. Now, before I finish up this live, I just want to check in. Does anybody have any comments, anything they want to ask me? Has this been helpful? Has it resonated for you? If you want to know about my program Relatable, you can book a time to have a chat with me below. I'll put a link to have a chat with me and find out more about it, so you can see if it's for you. But Relatable is all about helping you stop all that overthinking, get clarity of mind, feel comfortable in your own skin, have the conversations you really want to have, show up in life the way you've wanted to, and really turn things around. I teach you this beautiful understanding that makes life so much easier to navigate, live by. It's truly, truly the most precious, precious thing. Okay, so there's a link. Michelle, hi from Perth, just stumbled onto you for the first time. Lost my soulmate last year. I'm so sorry, honey. I really am. I'm so sorry. My sincerest condolences to you. Not sure if I'll ever experience love again. Haven't really been trying to meet someone at this stage. No, definitely can't forecast your future. That I can't do. I am not able to do that. However, I really want you to know that, and I say this to all of you, sometimes it can really feel like you are alone and you've been abandoned. You've got to understand, you are deeply, 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 deeply loved at all times, always. You cannot get life wrong. You cannot do it wrong, right? This isn't about getting it right or wrong. We are just here having all sorts of experiences, and we are here to learn and grow, to evolve, to be able to put things down, to stand in our own truth, speak our truth, feel empowered, get to know what that feels like, experience everything, right? If you're sitting here feeling shame and guilt over something that you've done in your past, everybody has screwed up. Everybody has done something they're not proud of. Everybody's made a decision or done things that they can't understand how they got to that place. If you feel like your life is not where you thought it would be, many people have that feeling. You are not alone, all right? But I want you to know, Whatever if you've been through some really tough things, and I know many people have and are, and I have as well. Don't sit here thinking I've had some blessed life. I have not. I've had some very, very, very challenging things that I've gone through in my life. And I just want you to know, when I look back through my life, I have always seen where I have been deeply loved and supported. I couldn't see it at the time because I was frightened and I was overthinking and I was stuck. But there was always something that showed up just when I needed it. Always, throughout every difficult situation I've ever faced. And that is not exclusive to me. That is something that is available to you all. And the more you connect to that and you have faith and trust in it, everything that you deal with in life becomes much simpler and easier to navigate. And to me, when you see that, you get to live in this lovely, rich, connected feeling. And that is a feeling that I never, ever thought I would ever get to experience in my life, that I now get to experience each and every day. And I'm more grateful for that than I am for anything in my life. Anything. Because no matter what happens, that is my baseline. That's what I come back to. And to me, that's what life is all about. And then from there, I go out and deal with whatever is in front of me, whether it be in my relationships, whether it be something in my personal life, whether it be something out there in the world, whatever it might be. Okay. So I hope that helps you, Michelle. And I'm sincerely sorry for your loss. Nadia, this is what I feel is happening. The loud tap on the shoulder. I feel like this is a huge tap. Yes. Good for you if you can see that. Those huge taps, they're very lovingly given and they're great gifts if you can see them that way. I rediscovered who I am at that retreat and it's still fresh in my memory. Then I see and hear this in the middle of the night. Wow, thank you. You're very, very welcome, honey. Very, very welcome. All right, everybody. I will be here next Friday. If you have a question you want me to answer, send it to hello@fionalukeis.com.au and just say Friday live Q&A. If you have a question that I haven't got to today, I will make sure I get to it next Friday. All right, everybody, take care. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.